Main screen turn on. So, fun story. When I started out this series, I had my captured footage from the game Final Fight 1, which was about 45 minutes. So I knew I had to split that up in 3 parts, each of about 15 minutes. And then I also obviously had my notes about all the trivia that I gathered. After doing the first episode, I actually thought that I wouldn't be able to make it further than 2 episodes, because I honestly thought that I wouldn't have enough to talk about. However, after making the 3rd episode, I actually have about 2 or 3 episodes worth of trivia left. So I'm actually not gonna put a new number of videos in there and just go on from number 3 and see where we end up. So this is part 4 out of 3. Not wanting to play Final Fight 1 again, I actually decided to do a playthrough of Final Fight Double Impact on the Xbox 360. Also doing it in co-op, just so you can see what that's like. Now, the person I'm playing with is actually my girl, and it took a bit of convincing to get her to play with me. She's not particularly a gamer, though she does sometimes surprise me with things like having 117 stars in Super Mario Galaxy. At any rate, she said she hated this game from start to end, but she stuck with me until beating the game as well. That's true love. I'm fairly certain our relationship is a lot better than Guy and Rena's, just judging by this picture of them. Seeing as how we're starting off this second set of videos with a different Final Fight game, I also want to begin by talking about some of the more important ports of this game that have been made, starting with the Super NES one. This game was released in 1990 in Japan, a year later in America and a year after that in Europe. Due to hardware limitations compared to arcade cabinets, this version could only display a maximum of 3 enemies at a time on screen, unlike the maximum of 10, like in the arcades. Due to this, enemy placement is vastly different, and it has more stopping points as well to make up for this. There were also a few things that were cut from this version. Guy isn't playable in it for one, so there's only Haggar and Cody to choose from. There's also no 2-player co-op either, so this is a purely single-player experience. The industrial area stage has also been scrapped, making the game that much shorter. And because of that, Rolento doesn't even appear in this game. In a stroke of genius though, the alpha version of Cody in Final Fight 1 actually mentions in his boss dialogue with Rolento that he doesn't remember being in this part of Metro City when he went through it in the past. That's funny. Notorious for their censoring, this game also would not go by Nintendo undetected. In the English localization, Damned, who was just beaten, and Sodom are renamed Thrasher and Katana respectively. Belger's wheelchair got changed to look more like a office chair. All alcoholic references are removed, meaning that 2 health recovering items got replaced. The line, "Oh my god," spoken after the car is destroyed in the first bonus stage is changed to "Oh my car." And, strangely enough, some character sprites were modified to have lighter skin tones. This version of the game was also put on the Wii's Virtual Console in 2007 and the Wii U's one in 2013. A revised version of this game was released in 1992 in Japan named Final Fight Guy, where, as the name of the game might imply, Guy was playable, but he actually replaces Cody. There's a new opening and ending explaining that Cody is training in Japan and that this is the reason why he's not playable this time around. Which is pretty weak if you ask me. But other than that, it's pretty much the same as the other version. In 1993, a port of the game was released for the Sega CD, aptly named Final Fight CD, and was published by Sega themselves, under license from Capcom of course. It retains the things that were removed from the SNES version and adds a time attack mode and voice acting to the opening and ending cinematics. Though looking at the quality of that's really nothing to brag about. But it also had a arranged version of the original soundtrack, and whether that was good or bad is up to personal preferences. The maximum number of enemies on screen was still lower than that of the arcade version though. A good amount of time after that, in 2001, the version that we watched in the previous 3 videos was released, Final Fight 1 for the Game Boy Advance, as one of the earliest games for the system. It's based on Final Fight Guy, though the maximum number of enemies has been increased. Damned and Sodom keep their original names, though other than that it holds the same localization changes as the 2 SNES versions. All 3 characters are playable again though, along with 2 hidden ones, and each has a alternate palette. 2-player co-op is back as well via link cable, and the players can choose the same character. Finally, the industrial area is also back again, and as mentioned before and as you could have seen in the previous videos, the dialogue scenes have been added before boss fights. Then finally there's this version, released in 2010 for Xbox Live and PlayStation Network. It's essentially bundled alongside other Capcom side-scrolling beat-em-up Magic Sword, and includes various graphic filters, including an arcade cabinet view that we see here, online drop-in multiplayer, in-game objectives, which you might have seen popping up in this footage here and there, which unlocks extra content like concept art and comic pages, and a newly arranged soundtrack composed by Simon Viklund, who previously worked on Bionic Commando Rearmed. So here we are again at the second boss of this game, who gave us just as much trouble as I had on my Final Fight 1 playthrough with his near invincible charge attack. Now, as mentioned before, this boss's name was also changed in the translation from Sodom to Katana. In Damned's case, it was actually apparent why his name was changed, but you might not know what Sodom actually means. Sodom is derived from the word sodomy, which is basically sexual intercourse that is deemed to be unnatural. So basically anything that doesn't result in making babies. You don't want little kids to look up the word and find something inappropriate. With Guy and Cody being added to Super Street Fighter 4, and Relento coming back to the roster in the Ultra edition of the game, Sodom is, at least thus far, the only playable Final Fight character from the Alpha series who has not made his return in the 4th installment. Speaking of Street Fighter, he was the only character who had the ability to choose from 2 different weapons to fight with in Street Fighter Alpha 3. This is due to the fact that you're able to select different fighting styles, called isms in this game. In the first 2 Alpha games he fights with Jite, and he does the same in his A and V-isms in Alpha 3. In his X-ism, however, he uses katana, like he does in this game. In the first video of this series, I mentioned Mighty Final Fight, a parody game of the original for the NES. Interestingly enough, there are actually two brothers of Sodom in this game, called Masamune and Murasama, just like his katanas. I win, because I am awesome.
Oh my god!
Massive footage skip! And we're back at the elevator where we fight Rolento. Since he was not in the SNES port, the developers of Final Fight 2, a SNES exclusive title, decided to add him as a boss of the 5th stage to make up for this. His appearance and behavior is mostly the same, and he is actually one of the 2 characters from the original game to make a return. Yoshinori Ono, the producer from Street Fighter 4, had in the past stated that he liked Rolento's playing style and that he would have wanted him in the game, but couldn't because the Final Fight license apparently lied with Capcom USA. Oddly enough, when Super Street Fighter 4 was released in 2010, both Guy and Cody were added, but not Rolento, who would have to wait for the Ultra Edition released 4 years later. Though he is not playable in the Street Fighter EX series, he does have a role in the storyline of one of the playable characters. A special tactical reconnaissance unit under the orders of Guile was on duty when I came into battle with a rival unit. Though this unit suffered casualties as well, there was only one survivor on the other side, Doctrine Dark. He has a portable breathing apparatus due to the physical injuries he sustained there, but more than that are the mental scars that resulted from the battle. He blames Guile for the massacre of his unit, saying he didn't train them well enough and that he was more concerned with chasing after Bison to avenge Charlie than with the safety of his own men. At any rate, the rival unit was led by Rolento, as you might have guessed. He is playable in some other games though, Capcom vs SNK 2, released in 2001, and Street Fighter X Tekken, released in 2012. In Super Gem Fighter Minimix, or Pocket Fighters, as the home console releases are known as, Ibuki briefly changes her outfit to that of Rolento's during her kunai special move. I don't really know the significance of this other than a fun cameo, but this might be the reason why she was paired up with him in the latter crossover game. Also, Rolento was actually a default character within the game when it was released, whereas Final Fight main characters Guy and Cody wouldn't be added until later as DLC. What happened? Somebody set up us the bomb!